Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jayakula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. One of the functions of our habit of thinking our way through the world and making decisions based on various overwrought, earnest thought processes, one of the functions of that for us, what we're getting out of it, is maintaining the illusion that we're in control. This really reinforces our small sense of self, that there's some entity that is in control and marching through time, and that this entity needs to have autonomy in order to be okay, and in fact values autonomy, and feels threatened by the very prospect of actually being in a reciprocal conversation with the world where you're following something and improvising rather than thinking things and arguing things with yourself and other people and making decisions and then plodding along. So acting instantly from the heart means responding in a spontaneous way to what's happening based on real intelligence, not labored, stale thought processes. In our culture especially, people are hanging on to this idea that they are self-willing, autonomous individuals. This is part of our karma. It is not actually our situation. When we are acting as if we're self-willing, autonomous individuals, we are simply in the staleness of our karmic habit patterns, not being in touch with nature, not being intelligent, not having good thought processes. Many times these things are presented. If I ask someone to do something or hint at something I would like to happen, or give someone an opportunity to enter into a more spontaneous moment with me, and they deliberately reject that and say, no, I'd like to do it a different way, and right now I think this is a better way, and I've thought this through, and this is why I'm doing this, X, Y, Z, or they simply just ignore what's happening. And then, well, I planned on doing something else because of something else, X, Y, Z. All of this is presented as if it's some sort of achievement or personal caretaking or clever or reasonable, any number of those things. But basically, all it means from my perspective is that someone is still insisting on being that small self, not really playing at all. And there's that thing that Ma says about being a beggar at the door, right? Just waiting for someone to come out and play. So those are always moments for me where the disjunct between my experience and what is professed to be the experience of a student is very, very different. Right? I'm being asked to accept the reasonableness of what's happening, and it's not reasonable at all to me. It's just stale, and it's just something that's happened a million times. So if you're with a teacher and you have confidence in what's happening, and if you have an understanding of what's happening, a sensitivity to what's happening, then you recognize the opportunity in those moments to be more playful and spontaneous and go along with whatever's being offered. Every time you refuse to play, every time you refuse, you're just basically saying, I don't want to be in this game right now, and I'm going to choose when I'm going to be in it and when I'm not going to be in it, and it's just the same old, same old. It's basically boring. I wouldn't want to live that way. I would bore myself if I lived that way. There's another poem I wrote about that image of the beggar at the door, but it was about being a beggar at the door of a house and waiting for the people to come out and share the meal with me. Like the food was outside with the beggar, not in the house. There's a game that I guess hardly anybody knows how to play fully, which is based on a deep understanding of what the process is when you work with a teacher. And of course, not everybody wants to do that, and that's everybody's absolute right to not want to do it. But at least understand that you're not doing it when you're not acting instantly from the heart. Instantly means in a state of improvisation related to what's actually happening, that you're responding to what has just been offered. You're not responding to, I had a plan that I made up 3 days ago and I'm going to stick with that. You're responding to this, the freshness in the moment. And so that kind of improvisational relationship has a lot of interest and freshness and adventure. It's not an adventure to live by plans. Not at all. Or decisions. Decisions are not adventurous. It's really much more fun to be living in touch with what's actually happening and then just seeing what happens. Even if you were working with a teacher and you had some idea of how your day was going to go, and then the teacher, of course, offers something that might happen that isn't your plan, even if you still think your plan's a good idea, you might have enough sense of adventure to wonder what would happen if I just said yes instead of no. But then we have all these concepts, you know. We have all these concepts. Concept, adventure. The way that the Lord is operating in this reality is described as Leela, sport or play. Plans are not that. Play is a game, right? There's some basic rules of the game. Let's compare this to soccer. There's a field and there's some basic rules about how you're supposed to move on that field. And then so another player expects you to be moving in that way. But there's also a ton of improvisation happening, right? Being in the zone and being aware of everything that's happening around you. So it's this mixture of structure and improvisation. You're improvising within a structure, within some rules, which is always one of my favorite things. When I was younger, I used to like to write very, very short pieces of writing so that I could have a very definite structure, but within that, try to do something really surprising. So if you're on the soccer field and you don't know the rules, or you know the rules, but you just decide to do something else, then what? Then you're not in the game. Then you're not in the game. You're doing something, but you're not in that game. And so the relationship with the teacher has rules. It has structure. And how can you learn that structure? Well, you can have an intuitive feeling for it, for sure, because I definitely do. You can also read stories of how people related to their teachers, which I always did when I was younger. I was always fascinated by stories of teachers and students. I learned a lot from reading those books. You know, just reading biographies and autobiographies of other practitioners and all the things they go through with their teachers and all the ways they learn to mine those relationships, to use them for what they're really supposed to be for. You learn from that. You learn what the rules are. And from reading scripture, also reading tantras and reading commentaries, you learn more about that relationship. There's lots of descriptions of the relationships between teachers and students in those books. And then if you should be so lucky as to have a living teacher, you also learn from that person what the rules are. But if you decide that you're not going to play that game, or you willfully ignore it, or you don't really understand it, then you're on the field, but you're like running around in your own pattern. And everyone's like, okay, I don't know what that person's doing, but okay. So the instant part is the improvisation. Everyone who's ever played sport or danced knows that there's a kind of total perception happening with all your senses being open when you're dancing or you're playing a team sport. That's what they call being in the zone. But then there's also rules. So you have to be able to do both. But what you're not doing when you're in a collaborative improvisational circumstance on a field of a game, what you're not doing is operating by your rules that you made up or inherited from some other game. We have this other game that's called plan everything out. Be independent. Decide everything on your own. That's some other game. Decide how you're going to help yourself. The whole idea of self-help. Whenever anybody says you have to learn to be your own best friend, I always kind of cringe at that, because I think that although in some way you could interpret that as being healthy, but the way that it's used in American culture is substitute being your own friend for actually having friends. Right? Do it all yourself. Parent yourself, friend yourself, lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. If you could possibly do everything by yourself, you would, or some simulacra of doing it by yourself, because of course no one's ever doing anything by themselves. It's a complete lie that we're ever doing anything by ourselves. And it's not really that valuable to have that attitude that we should be doing things independently. We are always doing things in collaboration and alliance, and that collaboration and alliance is an improvisation. And it also has rules. It's even like traffic. Riding on the road, on the freeway, has rules, but there's also a lot of improvisation happening. And if you just decide, well, my plan of how to drive is way better than all of this stuff, and plus, I don't want to be dependent on what the other drivers do, and I don't really feel like following behind this other car because that makes me feel scared. I don't really surrender and just follow behind cars. So I'm just going to go off and do my thing, and all of a sudden you're in some massive accident. This is repeated everywhere, that there's pattern, there's rules, and there's improvisation. But just doggedly, stalely following your plan is never going to lead to anything but more of that. And it's not a path of waking up. I don't applaud it. So oftentimes this is presented to me as someone is doing a good thing, and I'm supposed to applaud it and approve of it because it's independent and they're displaying confidence and they're saying what they want when they never said what they want before, or something like that. I'm supposed to applaud this. I don't applaud it. What can I do about it? I can't do anything about it. That's what people want to do, but I don't applaud it. It's not like, that's not his path of waking up. That's just a path of more of the same, doing the old thing better. It's like doing a conventional life better, right? So instead of being a pushover, now you're making these decisions and doing this stuff of your own free will with more confidence. That's like just that now you just become a better soldier for dualistic view. So I guess it's better than being a pushover. I can say that. But it isn't what I'm doing. It's not what I'm interested in. For myself, either. So there's a lot to recover from in this culture. A lot to recover from.
I have this contraction that happens after something new. It's like something really different and expanding and then contracting, pulling away from it and then trying it again and then contracting. Is this just something that I am doing, or is this like a human kind of pattern of contraction?
That happens, but maybe not that dramatically for everybody. It sounds like it's related to some fear. Mm. Of course, when we go to something or we have an experience, we touch some different, less contrived, more expansive way of being. We can't sustain that, especially in the beginning and middle and late middle. It's like hard to sustain those things. And so then it, of course, feels like a contraction because we can't sustain the new level of experience. And so when we have those kinds of experiences, our job is to work with them when we leave and try to find our way back to that same feeling as much as we possibly can. If we have a dramatic contraction like you're describing when that kind of thing happens, it really seems to me like that is fear of that new level. Like you don't want to leave where you're at. You enjoy it somewhat, when it's happening in that discrete period of time. But when you get home, there's some fear that your life will change too much, or you'll lose too much, or things will be too different, or something like that. Just that to me just speaks of a stronger attachment to the self that you have cobbled together and that is serving you functionally in your everyday life. Particularly, there's a kind of capableness in life that is not connected to the heart. And so we're afraid to lose that capableness. We don't understand that there's something else that's much, much better. We can't understand it till we get there. That there's a spontaneous skillfulness that happens when our heart is open that is much more effective than that forced capable, that learned capableness that's all like about pushing stuff out and loses the connection to here. But, we make money with this capable persona, and we have relationships based on that, and we have a feeling of control based on that. And so there's just fear about giving all that up. One of the most profound secrets of spiritual life is that we never know what's on the other side of letting go until we have let go, crossed that void, and gotten to the new thing. It works in that order always. This is where having some affection for adventure really is important, because you always have to let go of things. And usually when I say let go, it's not a process that you are in charge of. It's just a process you have to accede to or yield to, because things are being taken away. Old habits, old patterns, old people, old circumstances are falling away as you're doing sadhana on their own because of your sadhana. You're not deciding to let go of stuff particularly. It's just going. But you have to accede to it. You have to not fight it. That's a big thing. And then you think to yourself, I just have no idea what is going to come in place of this. If this X goes away, how will I ever be effective at work or something like that? But you have to have confidence in nature, in reality, in the divine intelligence, because it's real and it's not steering you wrong. And then you get into some other zone once you have yielded, which is like you might feel confused or you might feel stumbly because you don't have all your old chops together anymore. And then a new skill comes that is much more connected to real intelligence. This is always the way. And it really does relate to a sense of adventure, because if you're afraid of not knowing and you're afraid of being a little less capable for a while the new thing is coming, when you're afraid of the unknown, you hang on to stuff way too hard and too long. And the whole process just gets bogged down. But it's always this exact formula. So this is a structure, right? Like the rules of the game. That the old thing always leaves before the new thing arrives. Always. There's just certain ways that reality works. And that's one of them. The image in Dzogchen is of an empty vase, that we have to be like an empty vase so that we can be filled with that unconditioned nature. We have to empty ourselves of conditioning. And that's what we're doing little by little. But when you're a highly functional person, then there's attachment to being known as that highly functional person. I wrote another poem where I said something like, because students are afraid to make mistakes, I have to announce my mistakes very loudly. I have to make mistakes very loudly so that students will eventually be more comfortable making mistakes. Life is more like a river. And you're either in the river letting it happen, or what are you doing? I'm not sure exactly. You're trying to like scoop up buckets of river water from the bank? I don't know. But it's okay to just let yourself feel whatever's happening in that moment and not make a decision about it. That you don't know where it's going to take you. This is what I was talking about in the beginning of learning how to go along with life and learning how to yield and learning how to be adaptable. That's part of what the teacher's doing when the teacher says, do this or do that, or don't do this or don't do that on the spur of the moment. It's like, can you be more like going along with the river, or are you, doing something else with your building a dam and digging holes and whatever you're doing. Satsang with Shambhavi is produced by Jayakula, a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. If you enjoyed listening, please help us keep this podcast and many other teachings open to all by making a monthly or one-time donation. Visit jayakula.org to make a donation and explore more of our offerings.